Boop 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 boop.
It's like whales raping each other.
Yeah, that was what I was going for.
Oh, okay, good.
Yeah.
That's what I was going for too. Well, Brittany,
Yep.
you feeling ready for this episode?
I'm pretty ready for this episode.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, we can hit this episode pretty good. I
Yeah.
feel like the last couple in this series have been quite phenomenal.
They've been pretty good, yes. They've been really dark and full of doom and gloom, but hopefully this one will be a little more...
A little lighter.
A little lighter, a little more hopeful.
Well, next week we have to do something even more lighthearted.
Yes,
Perfect.
to make up for all the doom and gloom.
Brittany,
Joel,
today.
we are talking about climate change, again, for the third part. This time...
In the last part of
Yeah.
this particular series.
Yes.
So, we're the periodic roundtable.
We are the periodic roundtable.
I don't know if we need to keep telling them that or not.
Yeah, you think they'd know by now? Or,
Anyways,
yeah.
but you're Brittany and I'm Joel. Periodic Roundtable series, episode 3, the final one.
The final series episode for our climate change series.
So in the past couple ones, we talked about the evidence and proof of climate change and how it's affecting us and the different case studies that we can look at.
Right. So now we want to talk about what we can actually do to fight against climate change, what the everyday person can do, in addition to what the larger scale can be done as well. So not just each individual person, but the people who are truly responsible for all the climate change.
And that's what we should talk about.
Yeah.
I agree. So, but if we can change the particular patterns of people's economic decisions, it will deter some of the deleterious effects that is being created and generated by these corporations, right?
Right. So something that a lot of people have been doing lately is boycotting these large corporations. That helps. But then, honestly, everybody can throw in a little bit extra to do their part to help against climate change. So that's one of the things that we'll be talking about today.
It's one of the major things.
Yes.
There's obviously one great choice that every person can make to truly help with climate change.
What's that?
Not reproduce.
Yes,
Yeah.
that is a big one. So yeah, we want to talk about ways that you can actually reduce your personal carbon footprint. And that is a major one, is not only having less children, but perhaps having no children at all. That is the largest thing that somebody can do in order to combat climate change.
Well, I'm doing my part.
Yeah, I'm doing my part too. This is shut down for business forever.
Well, anyways. So, we have that reducing our carbon footprint, which is a phenomenal step towards reducing the overpopulation of the world around us, right?
right.
And even if you do decide to reproduce, limiting it to 1 or 2 such that you just have that replacement for the particular parents will significantly improve the future prospects of our world.
Right, so pretty much all we need to keep our economy going is just to have a replacement for a person. We don't need to keep expanding. We already have enough of a population as it is. And each person, no matter how carefully they live, will have some kind of carbon footprint. So when you have a lot of children, think about each of them having their own carbon footprint. And that will just compound the matters. So that is one of the most major things you can do in order to help.
Multiply and propagating.
Yes.
All of it. So let before we get more into the children and the propagation of carbon and just wanting to have something take on your carbon form and spreading your DNA everywhere. Sick creatures
I know,
spreading
right?
DNA everywhere.
Disgusting.
Let's talk about, say, changing fuels that we use, because that's one of the largest outputs of carbon and other greenhouse gases.
Right. So the transportation industry is a huge source of carbon emissions. One thing that we can do is look at using more fuel efficient vehicles. So, for example, hybrids, electric cars, even motorcycles and bicycles. Even using public transportation can help cut down on the carbon emissions from each person.
I know several people that are very good at this already. They either only bike to work or take public transport in order to reduce the amount of effect that they will have, especially for their carbon footprint in this world.
Right. So I actually take the bus every day, and the bus is a hybrid electric bus, and the bus is already running anyway, so you might as well take it. A lot of people also will carpool, so that could help cut down on things. And bicycles, motorcycles, those are obviously more fuel efficient bicycles, not even using any kind of fuel. And then electric cars as well. They still have some changes that they need to push for with electric cars, especially in this whole safety realm, but they are much more fuel efficient in the long run.
Well, there are several different alternative transportation developments that have been happening recently. So like you were saying, electric cars, but you also have hydrogen fuel cell cars as well, which despite essentially being a miniature hydrogen bomb rolling on wheels, it's getting to be pretty safe.
Yeah, it's almost there. It's almost safe enough. But I mean, when you think about it, it's kind of dangerous to drive anyway. So you might as well be a little more environmentally conscious while you're driving this pretty dangerous thing.
While living on the edge.
Yeah.
Are you truly living if you don't have death looming over you, or if you don't have to sign a death waiver every now and again?
Yeah, you absolutely are not. I love signing death waivers.
I agree. I'm glad that we can all appreciate living our lives close to death. So the other thing that we can do, Brittany, is easily reduce the amount of electricity that we're consuming. Now, on the individual level, it'll all start adding up if enough people are able to reduce just a little bit of the electricity that we're using.
Right, so this can be something as small as turning off your lights when you're not using them. It can include using more efficient light bulbs. It can include using less appliances. There's a lot of small things that you can do to increase your energy efficiency and decrease the amount that you're actually using.
Oh, absolutely. And I will say there's been many different types of research in order to help mitigate the electricity costs, most especially for heating and cooling systems for homes and business buildings. So people are actually working on polymers in order to develop aggregates inside of glass such that when they reach a upper critical temperature, they will actually block out sunlight so that you can reduce the amount of heating that's occurring. These aggregates, though, are focused on absorbing the IR range of the spectra. So you'll lose a little bit of visible light. However, it's mostly getting rid of the thermal energy that's entering the building such that you can reduce the amount that you have to cool your building.
Yeah, I've seen those quite a bit, not just with polymers, but with other materials as well. It's very interesting, and it's something that could definitely add up that little extra that would help out.
Or you can just use blinds as well.
Yeah, that's a thing as well.
You don't have to buy, silver nanoprism plated glass for your home.
You don't?
No, it's not necessary.
Oh, okay.
Or you can just build your home out of a tree and live out in the woods. That way you wake up every morning with a glorious view nestled in Mother Nature's bosom.
That sounds pretty nice, but it's not practical for everybody. I mean, if everybody was going out living in the woods, then wouldn't that just be a city again?
A city?
Yeah. If every person was just going out in the woods.
No. My plan was to become a hermit, right?
Right.
And then get more people to come and join me being a hermit. And then we can create like a little hermit colony out in the woods together.
A hermitage.
A hermitage.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. And then inside of this hermitage, we'll live as hermits and reduce our carbon footprint.
Okay. That's an interesting idea. Not practical for every person. The world still needs to keep turning, but yeah.
The world will turn no matter what.
Okay.
Until it's destroyed.
Until it's
swallowed
destroyed.
by the sun.
Yeah. That's a long ways from now.
Long ways. Well, if we can't live out in the woods, Brittany, and we've reduced our electricity, we've changed to alternative transportation, one of the other things we can do, especially in this polymeric world, where we have plastics everywhere, which are super cheap and abundant, right?
Right.
We can consider all of the capabilities of actually reducing the amount that we consume.
Yeah, so a lot of people are really familiar with the term reduce, reuse, recycle. That's actually in order. You want to reduce the amount that you use first, then you can reuse anything that you cannot reduce, and then finally the very last point is to recycle, because that actually does take energy in and of itself to recycle something.
Well, not everything can be recycled. So for example, if you're looking at the plastic bottles that you have, if it's polyethylene terephthalate, PET, then that is very recyclable. However, if you have high density polyethylene or most other forms of polyethylene, it's extremely difficult in order to recycle that.
Right.
So you have to consider reusing them. Of course, using your own bags when you go to the store.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, and
Paper.
yes, and the most important thing you can do is not using them at all. So be sure you can use not only with bags, but any other thing that might be plastic. Converting to something that is reusable has many, many uses.
That's considerable. As well as anytime you make any economic choices, you can consider the environment in the people that develop and produce the product that you desire.
Right.
I remember being really, really poor, and that was not a concern at all. So it's very difficult in order to consider these things. And it's understandable if you're just eating whatever you can get at the time because economic reasons.
Yeah, that's kind of a big thing too that a lot of people talk about with these changes that we need to make with climate change. What can the poor actually do? They are just trying to survive, they're struggling along, and if we're asking them to reduce what they're consuming and to reuse, it's not really fair to them because they're just trying their best. So we need to look more towards on the larger scale.
Yes, the larger scale is really what we should get into, especially with many of the population in the world where they have to, for example, burn trash just to stay warm at night. One of the aspects when I was actually traveling through India and observing the different cultural aspects was there are several villages that they will burn either collections of trash or cow dung in order to stay warm / make materials in order to insulate their homes. I don't think it's fair necessarily to ask them to try to reduce their impact because they're merely getting by. But the people we can definitely ask and hopefully add more mitigating forces behind it is the larger scale, larger corporations, larger globalization that's slowly consuming all of us, which is crazy.
Yes, we actually will be getting further into that as we go on. But yeah, going back to asking the poor, you can't really like burst into an alleyway where the homeless are living and be like, hey, you need to reduce the amount of stuff that you're using, guys. All right? Okay, cool. And
Or you know, at least get them to use replenishable materials. So like, hey, no. Give me the plastic bag. I'll give you this old McDonald's, box. So burn the cardboard instead of the plastic.
Yeah.
I don't think it'll go over well.
That's pretty evil.
Is it?
Yeah.
Yeah, it won't go over well.
Yeah.
Well,
there is one last thing that the everyday person can do.
the everyday person.
Yeah, and a lot of people don't like it. But what you can do is reduce your meat consumption. So meat is actually very, very energy dependent because cows, for example, they take a lot of energy to be able to raise even one cow. Also, they output large amounts of methane into our atmosphere. So being able to reduce your meat consumption or even purchasing meat from environmentally friendly sources like local farms can make a huge impact. In addition, if you can't or don't want to really reduce your meat consumption, another alternative is to hunt and fish your own meat yourself.
I have a pescatarian friend who will only eat fish that he goes out and catches himself in order to keep a more sustainable population. He also does that because the wild-caught fish nowadays is becoming so overfished that we're putting unnecessary strains on the ecosystems within the ocean, which are very easy to tip over and collapse, where entire species will just be wiped out, not only because of the predator-prey relationship that they have, but also because we are constantly destroying the breedable parts of those species.
Right.
So in order to mitigate that, he goes out and catches his own. The other thing you can do is environmentally friendly sources.
Yes. Instead of buying your meat from factory farms, look at the local farms in your area if there's any available. If you're too far out into a city for that, there's also farmers markets. Those are usually tend to be more environmentally friendly sources than buying your meat from a factory farm.
Yeah. Being a locavore is often something people will do in order to mitigate their impact because they know the nearby farms which have environmentally friendly and, importantly, avoiding using unrecyclable material.
Sorry, it sounded like you had another point following that.
No.
Yeah,
I had no point.
Oh, okay.
That was my point.
Okay.
Anyways.
Yeah.
But even if these are small things, right? If enough people start doing it, it's actually a change in the amount of resources available for the production of these environmentally friendly products, materials, and food. So, because you start adding more and more money into perhaps the more expensive environmentally friendly product or food, you are in the long run reducing the cost of that, because as the demand goes up, typically the supply will follow behind it. Basic economics. The other aspect of that is the not environmentally friendly starts losing profits, which will force the supply to go down as the demand goes down. Again, the supply following that demand trend.
Right. Yes. So that's another thing that we can consider when cutting back. There is one last thing that we can do. So not just reducing your personal carbon footprint, but also supporting nonprofits working on change. So there is a network, the U.S. Climate Action Network, that keeps a database of organizations that are working to fight against climate change. And if you are interested in looking into these nonprofits, either donating or volunteering your own time, we can actually share this with you on our social media, and you could look into these. There are thousands and thousands of organizations that are doing a bunch of different things to fight against climate change, and as we said, the small things do add up.
Little by little, many hues fill the mighty oak.
Exactly.
Many fish eggs filled the belly of the troll.
Okay, I don't think I've heard that one.
My grandfather always told me that. That, and you can only milk a dead cow once.
Yeah, your grandfather seems like an interesting guy.
Quite wise.
Yeah.
Wise beyond his years.
Yeah, interesting proverbs. Can't say I've heard those before.
I still don't know what they mean.
Yeah, I don't know what they mean either.
So, more importantly, especially in America, besides looking at the nonprofits, Brittany, we can go out and do things. Something very valuable that we have given to us here.
Yeah, God-given right. Most important thing that a citizen can do. What is it?
Go out and buy a gun?
No. I mean, if you want to exercise your Second Amendment rights, no, you go out and you vote.
Yay,
Vote.
voting!
Yes. So, of course, you want to go out and vote for your representatives that will actually do something and put into law things that will help against climate change. You don't want these people who keep voting against, EPA acts. You don't want these people who keep voting for these corporations that want to dump into local rivers. You want to consider lawmakers that will benefit us in the long run. And so the most important thing that you can do is go out and vote for the right people.
Become educated and vote.
Yes. Yeah, become educated first and then vote, please.
All right, make sure you vote. If you skip
Yeah.
voting, you're skipping the entire democratic process that allows for us to create change within our organization as a group of individuals put together as a binding government.
Right. And also, if you don't vote, you can't complain. You're allowed to complain after you vote.
After you vote,
Uh-huh.
right? Immediately, the moment I vote, right after I start complaining.
Oh, yeah. I put in my ballot. I'm like, yes. And I'm like, God damn this country. Immediately.
I know exactly how you feel.
Yes.
So, education and voting.
Yes.
And then shaming anyone that doesn't go out and vote and actually tries to care about the world around them.
Right.
It's very selfish and reptilian to only consider yourself like, oh, well, it's not my problem, right?
It's a common line of thinking, though. Like, a lot of people, especially older people, not saying all older people, but a lot of older people, they think to themselves, well, how can I immediately benefit? Because I'm not going to be around as long. They don't think about the long term. So a lot of people need to not only think of their generation, but 20 generations from now, are they going to even be around? It's a very important thing to consider, not only yourself, but those around you and future people that may come.
And besides, don't you want to be a part of something bigger than yourself? Don't you want to be a part of the human collectiveness, that unconsciousness that binds us together, rather than being an individual selfish asshole?
That sounds like a communist manifesto.
Listen, I don't promote any political system except anarchy.
Yeah, anarchy is the way to go, obviously.
Pure anarchy.
Yes. So then we can also look at the biggest contributors to climate change and global warming and consider how we vote considering that. So the biggest contributors are actually the military and large corporations. The U.S. military has actually produced more greenhouse gases than 140 countries combined. So especially with the latest war in Afghanistan, there was 1,212 million metric tons of greenhouse gas produced between 2001 and 2017 just from the U.S. military alone.
Yeah, that sounds about right. Lots and lots of resources. just being completely obliterated by our military spending, which is one of the largest in the entire world, which is crazy to think of, Brittany.
Yeah, it's actually the largest in the world. We spend more on military funding than several of the next largest countries combined. It's insane how much we spend on military funding. So you think how much it costs to build one of these fighter jets. We pump a lot of money into the military, and in return, the military outputs a lot of greenhouse gases.
Sad.
Yeah.
Fueling just one helicopter for the government. Just one. Just one fueling. That's all it is. Up to $6,500, which, mind
Really?
you, for a lot of people, that could be an entire year's of tuition in order to get a better education, in order to improve the environment around us by providing an intellectual benefit to our society.
Right. And you think about how many times it has to refuel. So that's bam, 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 bam.
Over how many vehicles we have in use.
Yeah. Ooh, that is scary to think about.
Absurd.
Yes.
So you have to consider when you're voting.
Right.
What are you voting for? What will these people do?
So, yeah, another thing that we can also look into is the corporations. So there was a recent study found that only 100 companies in the world, so 100 companies, are responsible for more than 70% of greenhouse gas emissions since 1998. So the vast majority of these companies, of course, are fossil fuel corporations. And in total, they're responsible for 923 billion metric tons of greenhouse gas production.
Wow.
Yes.
Wow.
100 companies.
That's all it takes.
Yeah. So you think about how many companies there actually are out there, and you can very easily find a list of these companies. It is not companies that I was particularly familiar with, other than the very, very large oil and gas companies. But when you think about how many there were in total, it's insane to me how just a few corporations can put out so much.
So we have all this massive production of greenhouse gases destroying our atmosphere.
Right.
We have all of these spills slathering over all of the beautiful sea creatures and suffocating them.
Right.
Developing miles and miles of surfactants, limiting all the oxygen dissolving that you get in the ocean, suffocating these poor creatures.
Yeah, and then you have these crews going out taking, video of these poor oil slick creatures. Sarah McLachlan playing in the background. Yeah, it's nobody wins in this situation.
So then what do we do? Let's say we find this company. We're like, ha, you're one of the main culprits for destroying our ecosystem. What do we do?
Well, that's the problem. They have all the money. There's nothing that we directly can do. But what we can do is go out and vote for those who don't allow these corporations to continue their profiteering, and we'll roll back on regulations that these corporations really need to follow in order to keep our outputs of not only pollution but CO2 emissions at a reasonable level.
But hey, man, listen. I think $100,000 at your next campaign will be great if you just sign a couple of bills to reduce CO2 regulations.
Yes, exactly. So therein lies the problem with a lot of politicians, is that they are easily swayed by money. You need to make sure that you look into the correct ones.
What is their voting history? What have they done in the past? You can start to plot a trend of their activities to see how influenced they are by lobbyists.
Right. It's very easy to find if you actually look deep into a lot of politicians' voting histories. You can see where the dollar kind of takes hold there.
Scary to think of. All of this power concentrated into a small little oligarchy based on the amount of money people have in order to produce lobbyists and other policy initiators.
Yes. So it's kind of depressing. I mean, what are we supposed to do? Are we doing anything right now that's actually helping? So even though all this seems kind of hopeless, we are fighting against these large corporations, the military. We're just one person. What can we do? We actually are doing things that are making a difference. Not just the individual person, but a lot of countries all over the world as well. So one of the things that recently happened that is really pushing for change is something known as the Kyoto Protocol. So this was an international treaty that commits countries to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, including carbon dioxide, methane, nitrous oxide, hydrofluorocarbons, perfluorocarbons, and sulfur hexafluoride. So there are currently 192 countries adhering to this protocol. And between 1990 and 2012, the protocol parties have reduced their CO2 emissions by 12.5%, which is beyond their original target of 4.7%.
I mean, that's great. Shout out to the countries that are actually able to do this and care enough. For example, Sweden definitely cares about the environment, and they take important policy actions based on their people going out and actually supporting the policymakers that care about the environment in order to reduce the amount of waste that they're producing. In fact, they have built these massive industrial parks that recycle all of the material that they have, and they also take the non-recyclable material and produce energy for their people. So much so, though, that their people don't produce enough waste based on the capacity of this environmental park.
Oh, wow.
And they actually import trash from neighboring countries in order to continue that park's production of energy. So they're so good at recycling and converting their waste to energy that they have to take other people's trash.
Wow, that is good. I think I've heard of that before. That's very impressive when you think about how honestly small of a country Sweden is.
And it's because they have a large section of their population that's highly educated, so they obviously, in the vast majority, believe and understand the effects of climate change and how drastic it can be. Therefore, they take the time in order to push their policymakers for these changes, which is something that we can consider here in America and other countries.
Right. So, yes, there are several countries that are very serious about their environmental impacts on the world. There are two countries in particular, the two world superpowers right now, however, that are outputting the largest amount of CO2 emissions. Can you guess what those two countries are?
I'm going to say Burma and Ethiopia.
Okay, no.
No.
Really
Okay.
far off. Of course, the US and China. So the US and China are responsible for 42% of the world's CO2 emissions. And the worst part of that is they are not part of the Kyoto Protocol.
Huh. I wonder why they were not a part of the Kyoto
I
Protocol.
wonder. Very interesting indeed. However, we can look at some other agreements that are a little more hopeful. So there is also something known as the Paris Agreement. So in 2015, there were parties of the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, or the UNFCCC. They all agreed to the aim of keeping global temperature rise of this century below 2 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels, and to pursue efforts to limit the temperature increase even further to 1.5 degrees Celsius. So currently 194 countries have signed the agreement, including US and China. So it's still too early to tell if the Paris Agreement has worked, but it is a very hopeful start.
Well, that's good. In 2015, so it's only been 4 years that this has been enacted
Right.
for this agreement. Well, hopefully we're taking steps in order to mitigate that. I do know that here in America, we have this odd protocol in place for companies that produce a lot of CO2 emissions, in which they actually have CO2 credits. So as a company, you're limited to X amount of tons of emissions. And if you actually reduce beyond that, you then have these CO2 credits
Okay.
that you can then sell to another company.
Ah.
Now, on the one aspect, it's positive to think of, oh, well, we're rewarding companies that are being able to reduce their emissions beyond their target.
Right.
However, on the other hand, all of these smaller companies, right? So if you make a company that has a certain output, but you already know that you can get way below the emissions that you have, you then create sub-branches of these companies in order to continually increase your amount of carbon allowment.
Ah.
But then you take all of those extra missing CO2 emissions and sell it to larger companies. So these massive companies are able to have so many profits that they can just buy their way out of concerning themselves with CO2 emissions
So they can buy their way out in multiple areas.
in multiple areas.
Yeah.
So not only avoiding persecution by our laws and policies, but also able to mitigate it through these other economic incentive ways.
Very interesting. I'm noticing a theme here, and I'm thinking about what we need to do. But we'll get into that
We'll
later.
get into it. Let's
Yeah.
talk more about the more positive aspects of climate agreements that we've had.
Right. So recently there was another agreement in this year. So the 2019 Climate Summit. In September 2019, the Secretary General Antonio Guterres will convene a climate summit to bring world leaders of different governments and the private sector as well as civil society together. And this is to support a multilateral process and to increase and accelerate climate action and ambition. So the summit will focus on key sectors where action can make the most difference. This includes heavy industry, nature-based solutions, cities, energy, resilience, and climate finance. So world leaders will report on what they're doing and what more they intend to do when they convene again in 2020 for the United Nations Climate Conference.
There's nothing in there I can make a joke about.
There's nothing in there you can make a joke about.
No.
Nothing at all.
I mean, I could, but it's really, really reaching, stretching.
Most of your jokes are really reaching.
No, that's not true. Okay, my analogies are on point every time.
Every single time.
Every single
Okay.
time. I refuse to give anything below the highest quality analogies to our listeners, Brittany.
Okay. I mean, you can throw in a shitty analogy here or there.
It's unacceptable.
Yeah.
People listen exclusively for the analogies.
Exclusively for the analogies. Okay, I need to break something to you. Some of your analogies aren't great. I wasn't sure.
So according to all of these summits that we have together, summiting to the particular peak, that the last peak of the world, because everything else is melted.
Right.
And so we have nothing but islands left.
Yes.
Far stretching across.
Everest Isle. Yeah.
Everest Isle.
Yeah,
That's the only one left.
the last one. Yeah.
It's warm and tropical though.
Yeah.
All the snow turned into sweet, sweet white sand.
Yeah. Oh, that doesn't sound so bad.
Yeah.
Well, okay, yeah, it does, but
And then we'll have to build a giant boat, Brittany.
yeah, a giant boat.
A giant boat.
Okay, like an ark.
Like an ark,
Yeah.
yes.
Okay.
And then we're going to put ion thrusters on this ark
Okay.
and blast off of this world.
Uh-huh.
And, hopefully one day return to the motherland. Mm-hmm. Till then, we'll have to travel from rock to rock,
Yep.
doing anything possible in order to gain more resources.
Right, if we can even reach these places, looping back around to an earlier episode, but yes.
Yes. Anyways, tell us more about these summits or climbs or...
Yes. So what is good about the 2019 Climate Summit is that it's not only bringing world leaders together, it's also bringing in corporations in the private sector. So the heavy industry, that is something that's going to be really, really important because these corporations, as we previously mentioned, are the hugest outputters of CO2 emissions. So if we can not only bring together governments, but also the private sector as well, that will probably have the largest impact on what we're doing for climate change.
It's actually being able to bring in the private sector and the industrial sector.
Yes.
And slap them around a little bit.
Yeah. Just, hey, cut it out. Stop it. Stop it.
I don't think they'll listen.
You don't think so?
How can you argue with a $250,000 bonus every quarter?
That is the problem. And I think that's what the Climate Summit is looking to solve instead of all these people voting on certain aspects of it because they're being pushed a little bit by the almighty dollar, instead holding these corporations to the same standards that we hold our own governments.
Listen, it's a question that we all have to ask ourselves sometimes. Are we killing too many people?
I think we are killing too many people. Too many people, too many animals, too many plants. We're killing a little too much.
A little too much.
Yes.
And I think that's a question that we need to address here and now.
Okay. Are we killing too much? Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
The answer is yes.
Very obviously.
I think so.
Yes.
So we've looked at the things that we can change, right? And to loop back around to all of it, there's small little things that we as individuals can change, which will help in the long run, especially the effects on the economy, which is going to be the larger influencer based on where the market will go, right? Which leads us into the more impactful aspect, which is these massive corporations and companies that are producing way beyond what should be allowed. In order to have a sustainable world, not only for us, but the majority of the species that are currently alive.
Yes.
And in conjunction with that, we have the energy consumption by the militaries. most notably the U.S.'s military.
Oh yeah, by far.
And then to continue on to the military and all of the policies that are developed around it is people's capabilities of voting, right?
Yes.
So we have all these things that we can either have a tiny impact on or we can do individual impacts on. What are the things that we can't change, Brittany?
So there are a few things that we cannot change, including pre-industrial CO2 levels. So it's highly unlikely that we'll reduce the amount of atmospheric CO2 emissions to pre-industrial levels. We can still reduce our emissions to keep levels from worsening and work towards carbon sequestration and reduction technologies to decrease the atmospheric levels, but we're never going to go back down beneath the amount of pre-industrial CO2 in the atmosphere.
We can never return.
We can never return.
Never make it back.
Yeah, even if we develop the technology that will sequester CO2 very efficiently, that will reduce CO2 very efficiently, the fact of the matter is we already have this large population. We already have these technologies that we're so dependent upon that do output CO2 that we can never return. It's the point of no return.
We've already passed it. We've tipped the scales too far.
Yes.
Now the only question is, do we ride this ride into a fiery death? Or do we swerve and miss hitting the wall of complete and irreversible climate change?
Yes. So that's kind of something that a lot of people have discussed. Is it too late for us to do anything? Kind of, yeah. It's kind of too late. But what we can do is slow down the effects that we are having. So that is why it's so important for all of us to do a little bit to slow down these effects, because what we've already done to the atmosphere with CO2 levels, it's irreversible. But we can slow down the ride a little bit so we don't crash quite as fiery, but it's still gonna hurt, but maybe it won't kill us immediately.
Well, you have the people in the front that see this problem, right? They have the observation and they see the wall coming and they're screaming to slam on the brakes, right? Then you have the people in the middle, right? So like your kids are buckled up and they don't care. They're just watching the little DVD player of Aladdin or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And they're unconcerned, right?
Yeah.
And then you have the ones in the back, the old ones, the ancient ones, looking on, staring with steely eyes. Like, fuck it.
Yeah, that's actually okay. That's a good analogy. I like that one.
So hopefully more and more people can sit up in the driver's or passenger seat and actually take a look at how close and how fast we're approaching an inevitable change, which will create destruction for us and other species.
Yes.
And actually take control of the wheel and vote and go out there and make changes.
Yes. So the changes for CO2 emissions is by far one of the most important ones to slow down climate change. But there is something else that we cannot change, unfortunately, and that is also the ice cap melt. So some scientists believe that the Arctic ice sheet mass is at the point of no return. And even if global temperatures were to drop back down, too much damage has already been done. So the ice sheets already have too many cracks in them from melting. They have already slid off too much into the ocean. So a lot of them are in danger of collapse, and it's too late. The foundations of it has gone to the point of no return. So there's not really a lot we can do about it. We can, once again, slow it down a little bit, but we've already damaged it too much.
So we've shooken the icy ground.
Yes.
And now this frozen mound has become nothing but silent tears dripping into the ocean.
Essentially, yes.
Okay.
It's very poetic.
I know. It's not quite an analogy, but point is that there's too much damage, can't return.
Right.
We can't just pack on more ice. Go up there and start taking some snow and be like, hey, and just push it into the cracks. We got you. Yeah.
You could try. We can try.
Right. We can take a little ice machine, and we'll go up there and we'll
Snow
throw it
cone
into
maker.
the cracks. Yeah.
It's fine. Yeah.
That's how that works, right?
No, not
No.
at all.
Oh.
Not at all.
Oh.
Yeah.
I tried.
Yeah. No, you didn't. You haven't tried it yet.
When are we going?
All right, let's go.
I'm ready.
We will add it to the list. We will hit the Arctic ice sheet and we will start filling in the cracks.
Well, especially after we get funding from our loyal fans.
Yes.
This will be one of the expeditions in order to help change the world around us.
Yeah, just two people going to the Arctic ice sheet and filling it with snow cones.
Hey. Well, we can flavor some of them, especially to help a lot of the animals. We're like, oh, look at them. They're so sad and they've lost their land. Here's a little snow cone.
Yeah.
It's watermelon flavor.
Yeah, the walruses and everything. They're like, oh yeah, well my glaciers I hang out on are going, ooh, this tastes red.
Yeah. That's the plan, right?
Okay.
It's a 2-in-1.
Right.
We save the ice sheets, and walruses now know the delicious flavor of cotton candy.
Yeah, that I don't see
It's snow cone form.
I don't see how this can possibly go bad. This is yes, in the plans.
Yeah. That's why we get funded.
Yeah.
This is the whole point, Brittany.
Of getting funded. Yeah, we're going to save the world doing that. But another way that we cannot save the world, however, is with the ocean temperature change. So there's actually a delayed reaction of the ocean temperature change because water has such a high heat capacity. So that means it takes a very long time for the ocean temperature to cool off again. So even if all emissions were to stop today, Earth's average surface temperature would climb another 0.6 degrees Celsius each year over the next several decades before temperature stopped rising.
Just because of the delayed reactions of this massive ocean collecting all of the energy, then slowly releasing it.
Yes. So because we have already output so much and increased the temperature so much, it's going to keep going even after we've stopped. Keep going, kind of like think of momentum even. And it'll start to drop off again, but it could be hundreds of years from now.
Wow. So the oceans are going to continually get warmer and warmer.
Yes, so that's something that we talked about in the last episode with climate change, is the problems not only with the CO2 in the ocean, but also with temperature. So the coral bleaching is having a huge effect, and we know what happens when there's coral bleaching and the coral reefs start falling apart.
No, I do not have an answer to this like the ice sheets. I know how we can fix the ice sheets, but the ocean warming up, now if it was cooling down, I could easily fix this problem.
Could you? Okay.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Oh yeah. So 40% of the global population lives near the coast, right?
Right.
Okay. Now,
Are you saying we all pee in the ocean?
if we line it up simultaneously, everyone gets on the comms, and we're like, all right, guys, we're all peeing at the same time, and you just have people hand in hand across the ocean together. Like, you count down, almost like the New Year's. You count down, and then everyone simultaneously pees in the ocean, bringing the temperature up together.
And bringing 40% of the world together. It's so beautiful. Too bad that's not the problem.
That's not the problem.
No.
So I don't know how to cool it down.
Yeah.
But
Nobody really does.
so that's just something we'll never be able to stop.
Yes. So yeah, it is a little too late for that one.
Oh. Well, I guess that's something that we'll have to deal with based on your actions.
Yes.
Even if we can just change one mind about this, I'll be satiated that our efforts in the past 3 episodes has been worthwhile.
Yes. And hopefully it's more minds that we change. But yeah, even if just like one person can make a little tiny difference, then that would be great. And then we can quit and give up.
And then we can quit and give up?
Yeah.
And then move on to the pirate ship.
Yeah, exactly.
But the most loyal of our fans will follow us onto the pirate ship.
Yeah, the most loyal fans. The very loyal fans that also, have this love-hate relationship with us will become our, our great villains when we're in our pirate ship. So they'll make their own pirate fleets.
Right.
Yeah.
And then we can battle each other on the ocean because there's nothing left of the land. As we talked about, the sea level rising, destroying all the capable, habitable land. What happens when we have an increase of people and a decrease of land, Brittany? Chaos. And anarchy. This isn't climate change, Brittany. This is disorder.
Yes, it will be disorder. It'll be roving bands of pirate ships fighting to find that last little stronghold of land that's left, Everest Isle.
And that's what we'll live on.
Yes.
What about our creepiest fan, Brittany? What's going to happen?
Our creepiest fan, okay. Well, our creepiest fan will definitely follow us, but he's not going to fight us or anything. Just follow us from a pretty respectable distance.
Respectable distance?
Yeah. I don't know if we'll ever see him, but he'll be there watching constantly.
With the plush dolls.
With the plush dolls.
Speaking of which, if you're interested in ordering your own official PRT plush doll, you have...
You're not interested.
You don't know that, Brittany. Listen, if we just get one order, I will force Brittany to hand make a plush doll of your choosing. It could be
Not me.
Your choices are me
And Joel.
and a beaker.
Yeah.
They can have a plush beaker.
A plush beaker? Okay, yeah, that's a safe one.
I think so. Now, you can also take the deluxe package.
The deluxe package.
$50 more for the plush doll. Your own authentic personal Joel hair.
Oh, okay.
Which, mind you, I have been complimented on several times.
Yeah, you have nice hair.
That's what they all say.
Yeah.
Jealous.
Yeah.
Some people ban me from their homes because my hair is nicer than theirs.
Oh, wow.
That's
intense.
It is intense.
What about the super deluxe collector's edition package? That includes the pint of blood, right?
the pint of blood, the authentic hair, several pictures of me that you can arrange in your home according to your own desires.
Yeah.
Yes. We already have one of them out there of a whole bunch of relics related.
Yeah, the shrine to you.
The shrine to me.
Yeah.
But you know what we should have a shrine to?
Who? What?
Saving the world through individual actions, Brittany.
Oh, that's such a nice shrine. Let's build that shrine.
Let's build that shrine. So, as the individual, hopefully you, sirs and ladies, can go find your own way in order to make your impact in this world. I hope that this series has been delightful for you, that you've learned at least something, even if you already agree with us. And trust us, we have had dissenters contact us.
Yes. I'm so excited to have dissenters finally. I am so excited for hate mail.
The hate mail from everyone that disagrees with the science that we pontificate upon.
Yes, it's been too positive. I'm like, you know what? These people are being too nice.
Too nice.
And then finally, that's when you know you're starting to make it, is when people start to hate you.
Start to hate you and disagree with you.
Yes.
And send you references to basically New Zealand Fox News.
New Zealand Fox News with, about a guy who self-published his own ideas about climate change. Oh, it's super reputable. Super reputable. Yeah, you could find that on Twitter. You can find the response on Twitter. Yeah.
But the point is whether they agree or disagree with us, they should add to the discourse.
Yes.
Of not only this climate change, but all the science that we talk about.
Exactly.
So if you have thoughts, ideas, concerns, questions, comments, answers.
Answers even. Wow.
Answers even.
Yeah.
You can contact us.
Yeah.
On social media, through our email, through all the sites.
Yes. So I've said it multiple times, but just to remind you, you can email us at prtcast@gmail.com. You can also find us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter under PRTcast. And if you wish to help us out to make it to the Arctic so we can stuff snow cones into the cracks of the melting ice sheets, you can also donate to our Patreon. So our Patreon is patreon.com/PRTcast.
Let us build the ice wall.
Yeah.
Snow cone 2020.
Yes. The two of us just alone. Oh yeah, we're gonna do it.
It is a worthwhile project.
Yes.
We will be using those funds not only to produce snow cones for all of the walruses that, mind you, are now homeless.
Very sad.
We'll also be using it in order to produce more content for you guys, be able to travel around and talk to more experts, and upgrade beyond the now broken, disheveled tatami mat wall.
Yeah, it's mostly gone. It fell pretty quick because there's only so much you can do with some tape and tatami mats. So.
And 2 poorly paid grad students.
Yeah.
Stuck in a garage.
Yep.
State of the art.
Yeah.
Studio.
State of the art studio. Hey, we're doing our best here.
Doing great.
Yeah.
All right. Well, hopefully you've enjoyed it. And next week, Brittany will be talking about.
Yes. Next week we'll be talking about the fitness. Damn it. The fitness of science.
The fitness of science. Next week, Brittany, we'll be talking about the fitness of science.
We'll be talking about the science of fitness.
That's what I said.
Okay, yeah.
And then we can always go back and loop to the other episodes we talked about, like addiction.
Addiction, yes.
I'm addicted to the fitness of science.
Yes, I am addicted to the science of fitness.
And we will discuss that more. And you can agree with either Brittany or me on our dissenting opinions.
Very dissenting. Butting heads here.
Butting heads.
Yeah,
Well, I think that's all we have for you this week.
Yeah,
We
that's it.
will see you next week.
All right, see you
Thanks for
next week.
tuning in.